There is a sixth dimension in the entertainment industry where different actors play the roles of your favorite characters in your beloved TV shows and films. This is known as Table Read Tuesday. Welcome. And tonight we read The Twilight Zone. It seems like every week I say almost the same thing. This is a show that changed the industry, that changed everything. And it's still always true. And it's especially true here. So it's different, but like if you haven't watched The Twilight Zone, if you like Black Mirror, then definitely watch The Twilight Zone. And we'll let everyone else say like what other shows they feel like if you like this show, you should watch The Twilight Zone of. But like many of the shows we've read so far, like they open the doors to other shows. Like this one was like sci-fi was mainly made just for kids and different things before this was made. And a lot of the things that they cover in these shows still apply today, even though this one we're about to read tonight was written in 59, and you'll still see like how this is super applicable to today. And I'm going to introduce you to the cast that are going to read this great episode and these great roles. So first, let me introduce you to Vicky Dykes. And everyone tell them what else you do and where they can find you, please.
Hi, I'm Vicky Dykes. I'm from Central Alberta. I'm an actress, and I've actually been waiting to be doing a yoga show, and I found out it's not going to be on TV, but I'm not going to let that stop me. I'm going to continue and get it filmed, and we'll see where it goes from there. You can find me on social media. I'm on Facebook under the name Vicky Dykes, and I'm on Instagram. I'm YogaGramma7.
Excellent.
Oh, and I'm actions and description tonight.
Yes, thank you very much for that. There's quite a bit of that, I believe, tonight. Although this is a shorter episode than lots of the table reads we do, but it'll be great, and we'll have after discussion after that. And another actor for tonight, Erin Lillis.
Hello there. I am Erin Lillis, actress from Los Angeles, California. I can be found most often on the No Sleep podcast, which, as many other anthology horror podcasts, anthology sci-fi podcasts, was inspired by the Twilight Zone. I think we made a direct call out to the Twilight Zone last season when we were doing references to TV and radio shows. But if you like audio dramas like Welcome to Night Vale, Hidden Frequencies, the No Sleep podcast, any anthology horror with a narrator is essentially inspired by the Twilight Zone. Everybody wants to be the Twilight Zone. And you read a lot of pitches that are like, oh, it's like the Twilight Zone meets blah, blah, blah. It's the basis for every kind of off-kilter show. If you like M. Night Shyamalan, if you like you said, Black Mirror, if you like, what's his name? The Minority Report guy, I'll figure it out later because he's important. You'll like the Twilight Zone. Please enjoy. I am playing nobody because where is everybody tonight?
I don't know. One person we do know where he is, Peter Leach.
Hi, I'm Peter. I'm from Calgary, Alberta. I am a massage therapist and personal trainer, and apparently now an aspiring voice actor. I'm playing Mike tonight.
Very nice. And next we have Kat.
Hi, I am Kat DeFoxfire Wilson. I am playing the voice, a medical officer, and reporter number 2, all unnamed characters, and looking forward to it. You can find on social media, mostly with Two Households in Fair Corona, a Shakespeare reading group.
Excellent, excellent. And we have Morgan Toll.
Hi, I am Morgan. I am a voice actor here in Los Angeles, SAG-AFTRA. I'm also the talent executive for Streamily.com. It's really cool. You should check it out. And you can find me on Instagram at Morgan Elizabeth Toll.
All right. And that's everyone. So we can enter the sixth dimension. I'll share the screen. so that Vicky can take us away.
The Twilight Zone, episode 101. Where is everybody? Written by Rod Serling. Act 1. Standard road opening. Shot of the sky. The various nebulas and planet bodies stand out in sharp, sparkling relief as the camera begins a slow pan across the heavens.
There is a sixth dimension beyond which is known to man. It is a dimension as vast as space and as timeless as infinity. It is the middle ground between light and shadow, between man's grasp and his reach, between science and superstition, between the pit of his fears and the sunlight of his knowledge. This is the dimension of imagination. It is an area that might be called the Twilight Zone.
The camera has begun to pan down until it passes the horizon and is flush on the opening shot. Each week, the opening shot of the play. We are now looking down the small 2-lane asphalt highway. It is dawn. The road is deserted, save for a small diner on the left-hand side. A broken neon light flashes on and off over the front door. From inside, the sound of a rock and roll record lends a strange raucous dissonance to the early morning silence. Then the camera sweeps right for a long shot. Mike Ferris, who suddenly appears walking down the road. His step is tentative, unsure. He's a tall man in his 30s. His dress is nondescript, his only identifiable garment being army pants. There is an decisiveness, a puzzlement in his features as he comes closer to the camera, sees the diner, stops, rubs his knuckles over the side of his face, and feels his beard stubble. He pats in his pocket, unsure, reaches in and pulls out a couple of dollar bills. For some reason, this buoys him up. He looks a little more resolved as he walks up the steps and into the diner.
We are looking at a male Caucasian, age approximately 31, height approximately 5'11". As to his name, where he is, and what he's doing there, this even he doesn't know. For the journey that this man will take is an excursion into the shadows, and all of you are invited to go along.
Dissolve to opening billboard, interior diner. It is a small, nondescript, typical eatery with a row of small booths along the outside window, a counter, and a kitchen beyond. The room is empty. Pan shot Mike as he walks over to a stool and sits down at the counter, reaches over, takes a menu, studies it for a moment, and then turns and looks over toward the jukebox. Close shot jukebox, garish, multicolored, still blaring out the music. Shot room. He turns on his stool to look toward the opening to the kitchen. Close shot on an oven inside kitchen. Through the glass, we can see a row of 6 or 7 pies baking and almost fully browned. A shot of room. Mike calls out.
Is this thing loud enough for you out here? I mean, can you hear it all right?
He grins wryly, waits momentarily for an answer that never comes, turns and looks again at the jukebox. He rises, gets off his stool, goes over the jukebox, looks all around it, pushes it away from the wall a few inches, reaches back, fiddles with the knob. The music goes much lower. Then, satisfied, he pushes the machine back against the wall and goes back over to the counter.
Kind of early for that kind of music, isn't it?
Still silence.
I noticed there's a town just up the road. What's the name of it?
Again, silence. Mike puts the menu down, peers through the little opening to the kitchen. Interior kitchen, a small room with a couple of stoves, etc. He goes over to the stove, turns down the oven, and looks around the room. He goes over to a back door, tries it, and it swings open. He steps back as it creaks open and reveals the diner's backyard.
Hey, you got a customer out front. Hey, customer here.
Still no answer. Mike turns, retraces his steps to the lunch counter. Shot of room. Mike still shows no real emotion beyond a puzzlement. He's neither frightened nor concerned as yet. Again, he picks up the menu and studies it. He talks out loud now.
I think ham and eggs up and soft, hash browns, coffee, black. Customer, got a customer up front.
He rises
And
from
we-
the stool.
Ham and eggs, hash browns, coffee, black.
He stands there by the open, swinging door, staring into the empty kitchen. His eyes start about now, and for the first time, we see something beyond puzzlement on his features. What supplants it is irritation. Not acute, but definitely there. He reaches into his shirt pocket and takes out a crumpled pack of cigarettes, goes back to the lunch counter. Now he scratches his head, sits down on the stool for a long moment. Suddenly, the music on the jukebox stops. The sudden cessation of noise brings with it a silence even more obvious. Mike turns to stare at the jukebox, and he looks up at the clock. A close shot on the clock. It is the counter near the coffee urn. Its face turns sideways so that Mike can't see it. Close shot Mike as he goes over to the clock to turn it around and stare at it. Close shot clock. It reads 5:45. Shot of Mike. Mike turns away from it, but in doing so, brushes against it and knocks it to the floor. Close shot clock. On the floor, as Mike bends over and picks it up, the face of it is broken. He puts it back on the counter, then goes back over to his seat. Close shot Mike. His fingers tap a nervous staccato on the countertop. The silence now begins to be oppressive and nerve-wracking. Suddenly, as if in an afterthought, he reaches into his pocket and pulls out the money, looks at it in his hand, and then reaches into all his other pockets. He finds nothing. He rubs at his face again. Mike speaks aloud, but obviously to no one, in an attempt to make noise or sound or just to end the stillness.
Cash customer here. Hungry cash customer. I got $2.85. Almost. $2.85. American money. American money. Sure, American money.
He looks at the clock again and into the opening to the kitchen and the swinging doors, at the silent jukebox, and back at the money in his hand.
Well, we got this much settled. I'm an American.
He raises his voice.
There's little question about my identity. Let me put it to you this way. I'm not sure who I am, but I got $2.85 and I'm hungry. This much is established.
He gets up off the stool and suddenly slams both palms down hard on the counter, making all the salt shakers and ketchup bottles quiver and rattle.
I got $2.85 and I'm hungry.
He stops dead now, listening to the silence that unfolds and surrounds him. And then he looks around. Again, the sense of irritation. He takes a drag on his cigarette, then butts it out, rises, goes to the front door and stares out. Exterior lunchroom. The long road that leads away from the lunch counter without a sign of traffic, people, or anything. He whirls around to look back into the lunchroom.
I'm going to wake up in a minute. I know I'm going to wake up. I wish it'd be a noise or somebody to wake me up.
He suddenly sticks two fingers in his mouth and whistles, listens for a moment, and then he whistles again, kind of grinning to himself.
A little noise, please. Yes, sir, that's my baby. No, sir, don't mean maybe. Yes, sir, that's my baby now.
He laughs a little sheepishly, listens for a moment to the silence, and then he turns and goes back to the lunch counter. Interior lunchroom. Mike sits down, buries his face in his hands, rubbing his eyes, massaging his temples, as if trying to force out with his fingers some connective link, some reassurance of existence, some knowledge of where he is and what he's doing. Once again, he looks around the room, pan shot with his eyes, taking in the shots of the coffee urn, the menus, the salt and pepper shakers, all the simple, commonplace, terribly normal adjuncts to what should be a normal scene, but somehow it isn't. He rises now, looks around again, then walks to the door. Close shot on the open sign on the door. Close shot Mike as he slowly reaches down and turns the sign over to read closed, and then he walks out. Dissolve to exterior town street, Mike's point of view. It's still early morning, and what we're looking at is the main drag of a small town, flanked by stores, a courthouse, a post office, etc. The most singularly overwhelming feature of this is the complete absence of motion and all noise. Long shot Mike Ferris as he walks down the sidewalk looking from one side of the street to the other. Track shot. Past stores as Mike goes by them, drugstore, grocery, soda bar. Most of the doors are open and there are lights on inside, but there are no people. There's an odd, undefinable feeling that permeates the scene, a sense of activity, and yet coming with no players and no people, as if it was a place full of motion and movement, suddenly stripped of the people performing it. Long shot down the street. From Mike's point of view, it is devoid of any kind of movement whatsoever. It is absolutely quiet. Over this tableau, we superimpose the title, Where is Everybody? Along with major credits. Close shot Mike as he stops and looks around. He is suddenly startled by the sound of chimes. He whirls around and looks up. Long shot church steeple bell as it rings. Close shot Mike. He shades his eyes to stretch out the church, and then in turning away from it, he stops abruptly, staring at something across the street. Long shot across the street. A little clothing store, and alongside of it, an alley where a large delivery truck is parked. In the cab, in the passenger seat, a human figure can be seen. Long angle shot. Looking down as Mike goes to the curb, cranes his neck to look over to the truck.
Hey, miss.
He makes a gesture that is part a wave, part an attempt at reassurance.
Over here, miss. Look, wonder if you could do me a favor. I don't want you to think I'm nuts or anything. I mean, it's nothing like that. It's just.
Again, he grins a little.
I don't seem to remember who I am. It's the craziest thing. I've looked all around and I haven't seen anybody. I guess it's just kind of early or something. Literally, there hasn't been a soul.
He takes a step off the curb, looks again towards the cab of the truck. A little puzzled. He smiles again.
You know, it's a real oddball thing, but well, I woke up this morning. Well,
He stops.
I didn't exactly wake up. I just sort of found myself on the road walking. Amnesia. That's what they must call it, isn't it? Amnesia? Well, that must be what I got. I just don't remember a thing. I can't find anybody to ask.
Tracking shot as he starts to walk across the street.
You're the first person I've seen. Look, I really don't want to frighten you or anything, but I was wondering if you could just tell me if there's maybe a doctor or something.
Close shot Mike as he stops dead in his tracks. He's about 10 feet from the truck. Medium long shot the truck. A female figure is outlined in the passenger seat, but very much in the shadows. Moving shot Mike as he gets close to the cab. Close shot profile female head. Flash close shot Mike's eyes as they suddenly narrow in reaction. Close shot Mike's hands on the door handle as he suddenly yanks the door open. Medium close shot inside the cab. The female figure suddenly slumps down in the seat, her head sticking out of the open door, the hair cascading down. The camera pans slowly across her body until it stops at what should be arms. There are no arms. Mike reaches over, grabs at the hair of the figure, pulls it up and around to stare into the wooden face of a mannequin. He very slowly gets loose, and the mannequin tumbles back into the seat and then down to the floor of the cab. Close shot floor. The mannequin is staring up with glassy eyes, manufactured eyes. Medium shot Mike as he slowly backs away, then turns to read the lettering printed on the side of the truck. close shot lettering. It reads, Resnick Store Mannequins. Close shot Mike, as his lips form the words that he's read. Then he turns to look through the window of the cab at the figure of the mannequin. He takes a few steps over to her and then very gently picks her up and sets her back on the seat.
I'm very sorry, madam. I can assure you that at no time did I mean to be so upsetting. As a matter of fact, I've always kind of a secret yen for quiet women. You get what I mean, babe?
He kisses her fingertips and then plants them on the mannequin's nose.
Now don't take any wooden boyfriends.
And then he looks at her again for a more pensive moment, as if unspoken now were his earnest wish that this creature was alive and could be talked to. He turns away and walks back across the street. Long shot Mike, as he walks, series of shots Mike walking in different sections and on different streets. The last scene ends with him stopping abruptly to stare at something down the street. Long shot gas station. Out in front is a glass enclosed public phone booth. Long angle shot looking down at Mike as he walks towards the gas station and goes into the phone booth.
Look, I wonder if there were anyone who could tell me.
He stops abruptly, grins, shakes his head, slaps at the side of his head with an open palm, fishes in his pocket and takes out a coin, deposits it into the phone, and then dials the operator. He listens to the dial tone that comes on and off with dull regularity. He jiggles the receiver impatiently.
Operator, will you listen to me?
He pounds on the phone and then just indiscriminately dials a bunch of numbers. He's about to throw down the phone in disgust when suddenly, at the other end of the line, he hears a dial tone ringing. He very slowly and very gratefully picks up the phone now and hears a voice filtered on the other end.
This is a special operator. The number you have reached is not a working number. Please make sure you have the right number and are dialing it correctly.
Mike starts to shout into the phone.
Is everybody asleep over there? What kind of operation do you people run?
And then she repeats all that she's just said as Mike listens to her, excited beyond words that he has found someone alive. And when she finishes repeating the message, he grabs the phone and is about to speak when suddenly he hears the operator's voice again.
This is a recording.
There is a certain suggestion of tenseness that suddenly shows on Mike's face.
This is a special operator. The number you have reached is not a working number. Please make sure you have the right number and are dialing it correctly.
A recording?
He pounds on the receiver hook and shouts,
Operator, look, all I wanted to know was where I am. I just want to know the name of this place.
Then he slowly lets the receiver loose and it hangs down from the phone box. Mike's hand touches and then grasps a telephone book, a thin one that he grabs and looks at hungrily. Close shot telephone cover. On it is written Oakwood. Medium shot Mike. He rips open the cover, looks down at the first page.
A. Abel, Ackerman, Adams, Allenby, Arnold. All right, boys, where are you?
His voice is a little edgier now.
Where do you all live? Just in this book here?
He rips the page open.
Baker, Belden, Biltmore, Botsford. Well, look, gang, who's watching the store?
He suddenly turns to look out at the street. Full shot the street, Mike's point of view. Medium close shot Mike.
Who's watching any of these stores?
He lets loose of the phone book now, lets it fall to the floor, and stands there motionless for a moment, deep in thought. And then he automatically reaches for the door handle, turns it, and pushes. Nothing happens. He tries again, and it remains locked. He waits a moment and then puts all his weight against it. It does not yield. It is more than an irritation that we see on Mike's face now. There's the first suggestion of a real concern. He looks around this strange glass prison.
All right, who's the wise guy? Who locked the door?
He tries the door once again.
That's a great gag.
He pounds again and then suddenly stops and looks all around. Pan shot from Mike's point of view. From inside the phone booth, the camera moves all the way around the glass, almost in a 360 degrees pan. Medium close shot Mike. He laughs softly, shakes his head.
Trapped in a phone booth. Trapped in a glass phone booth like a goldfish.
And he calls out,
here I am. You got me. Everybody come see. I'm right here on display.
long angle shot looking down at Mike. In the phone booth, as once again, he starts to pound on the glass.
How would I hand somebody a little assistance? How about it? This is absolutely hysterical town, and I'm growing very fond of it, but I'd appreciate it if...
He stops abruptly. Close shot Mike's face as he stares at something through the glass. Close shot, a cigar, half smoked and still burning, lying on the sidewalk just outside the booth. Angle shot, looking into Mike's face through the glass. For the very first time, there's a look of incipient fear.
Look, who's ever out there, this isn't funny anymore, you understand? I don't like this jazz. It's getting dull. Look, I know I can be heard. I know someone's watching me.
Immediately after he said this, he realizes he has suddenly given voice to his fear. He's labeled what is beginning to bother him, simply a sense of being watched. He suddenly bends down, picks up the phone book, flings it against the glass of the door. The glass disintegrates. Mike sticks his hand through, opens the door from the outside, and then kicks at it with his foot. It springs open and halfway off its hinges as he goes out into the street. Then he looks down at his hand. It's cut. A rivulet of blood runs down through the fingers. He feels for a handkerchief, takes it and wraps it around the hand. He squeezes it a couple of times, trying to get more blood to flow, and then he starts down the street again. Long shot, street, Mike, point of view. Once again, the sense of emptiness and loneliness, and that bizarre quality of activity with no actors. Track shot with Mike as he continues down the street. He pauses in front of a building and looks up. Close shot sign, which reads police station. Track shot. He walks up the steps and into the building. Interior police station. There's a small anteroom and then an open barred door, which leads to a corridor lined with cells. Medium close shot Mike. As he enters and looks around, there's a police sergeant's desk. Files, pictures of wanted men on the wall. A teletype machine hums in the corner. Mike goes to look at it. The light over it is on, but nothing is being written. He whirls around and stares towards the sergeant's desk, goes behind it, picks up a microphone, fingers it for a moment, and then talks into it.
Calling all cars, calling all cars. Unknown man walking around the police station. Suspicious looking character, probably wanted by the FBI.
And then he stops, looks at the mic, chuckles softly for a moment, and then stops abruptly. The smile gone, he flings the microphone away from him and looks slowly around the room.
I wish I could shake that feeling. That crazy feeling of being watched, listened to.
He stares toward the cell doors, then begins to walk slowly towards them. Close shot Mike, as he stands in the middle of the next room, looking from empty cell to empty cell. And then he whirls around at a bubbling sound. Well, there's on a hot plate is a pot of coffee perking. And behind him, we see the barred door leading to the anteroom begin to close. Mike's eyes look wild, as if subconsciously he realizes he's in danger. He whirls around to see the cell door closing, and then with a shout, throws himself against it, pushing it away before it locks. He seems to hang on it now, breathing deeply.
All right, time to wake up. Time to wake up.
He whirls around, his face distorted, close up against the camera. He shouts.
Time to wake up.
He stumbles through the anteroom and then back to the street. Exterior street, long angle shot. Looking down at Mike as he stands in the middle of the empty street, the stores around him, the quiet. He suddenly screams.
Where is everybody? Where is everybody?
Fade to black, end of Act 1. Act 2. Fade on, film clip, a hot and high afternoon sun Shimmering in a sea of heat waves, the camera sweeps down until it is level with the street and a long shot Mike Ferris as he sits on a curb, staring dully and numbly across at nothing. The church steeple clock sounds 2. He looks up, listens to it, but it is no longer shocked by it. He just lets the sound of the chimes play along and the edges of his consciousness without really being aware of them. Now he rises and walks slowly, methodically, without much apparent purpose across the street. He looks up to see a sign reading drugstore. He enters. Interior drugstore. It is light and cheerful inside. And on the left-hand side is the soda bar with a big mirror behind it full of stickers advertising various concoctions, soft drinks, ice cream, sandwiches. Mike, as he enters, pauses by the cigarette and candy counter. He looks through the glass for a long moment and then reaches behind and takes out a couple of cigars. He unwraps one, sticks it in his mouth, lights it, takes a couple of draws, butts it out, reaches in another box, takes out one of those, and then looks into the box.
2 for $1. That's more like it. I always liked this expensive cigar.
Then he turns with a smile and says to nobody,
How about you guys? Any of you want a cigar?
Series of shots of empty booths. Medium close shot Mike as he gets up on a stool.
I'll take a chocolate soda with chocolate ice cream.
He starts to laugh, but the laugh is checked almost immediately as he sees his reflection in the mirror behind the counter. His fingers run exploringly across his face, taking in the beard stubble, the hollowness beneath the eyes, the strange, haunted, frightened look that is obviously there. He looks at himself again for a long moment.
You'll forgive me, old pal, but I don't recollect the name. The face seems vaguely familiar, but it's the name that escapes me. Tell you what my problem is. I'm in the middle of a nightmare that I can't wake up from. You're a part of it. You and the ice cream and the cigar, that police station, the phone booth, that little mannequin, this whole bloody town, wherever it is. Whatever it is. I just remembered something. Scrooge said it. You remember Scrooge, old buddy? Ebenezer Scrooge? It's what he said to the ghost, Jacob Marley. He says, you may be an undigested bit of beef, a blot of mustard, a crumb of cheese, a fragment of an undone potato. There's more gravy than old gravy about you. You see? That's what you all are. You're what I had for dinner last night. You must be. But now I'd like to wake up. I've had it. I'd like to wake up now. And if I can't wake up, at least I'd like to find someone to talk to.
He rises now and goes behind the counter. He starts to fix himself a chocolate soda, experimenting with some of the cupboards until he finds the right ingredients, the ice cream, the milk, etc. And then he mixes himself a soda. Tall, frosty, delicious. He starts to sip it with a straw as he walks around the drugstore. He stops by a poster of a high school football schedule. Close shot, cardboard sign. It reads, Oakwood High School, 1958 schedule. A list of teams and dates to be played appears below. Medium close shot Mike as he takes it in one hand and reads it as he sips the soda. But the normality of it suddenly points out the incongruity of what he's living through. He puts the poster back on the counter, shaking his head, staring at it.
I must be a very imaginative guy. Very imaginative. Nobody in the whole world can have a dream as complete as mine. Right down to the last detail. Right down to the last detail.
He turns, stares across at a big magazine rack near the front door of the store. He crosses over to it, stares down at some of the magazines, and then kneels down. Interested, he begins to trace the dates on each one of the magazines. The majority of them say October 1958, and his mouth forms that phrase, October 1958. And then he bites his lips, shakes his head again, rises, looks down at the group of comic books, each with a lurid title having to do with horror themes, spook themes, etc. And then suddenly he stops and looks down at one, the cover of which is peeping out from behind the others, and whose title is visible. He reaches down and pulls it out just a few inches farther so that he can read the entire title. Tight close shot cover. The title, The Last Man on Earth. Medium shot Mike. He picks it up and stares at the cover, then flings it down on the floor. He turns rapidly away and heads back to the counter where he puts the soda down. He is suddenly gripped by another spasm of such utter loneliness that it forces him out onto the street. Exterior street. Camera follows him out of the store. As he gets out on the street, he suddenly shouts shrilly, illogically.
Hey, anybody? Anybody hear me? Anybody hear me?
He almost lurches to the other side of the street, where he buries his face against the window of a building. When his head goes back, he sees the letters U.S. Post Office, and he starts to laugh again.
Any mail for me? Anybody write me a letter? I don't know what my name is, but maybe you can tell me in there, huh? Will you tell me what my name is?
He pounds his fist against the glass and then suddenly has to stifle what obviously is a sob as he begins to give in to the loneliness and to the unknown and to the pulsating, gnawing fear that envelops him. And then he turns away from the window, struggling for composure. Close shot Mike. He looks at something across the street. Camera sweeps wide until it stops on long shot building with the sign reading Citibank. Long shot Mike, as he gets off the bench, walks across the street and into the bank. Interior bank. Track shot Mike, as he walks past all the tellers' cages. He stops at the end of the line, presses his face against the bars. Close shot, row after row of stacked bills. Medium shot Mike.
I'd like to borrow about $800,000. How about it?
He
Thanks.
nods and grins.
I think that's really generous of you. I think that's really generous.
He pulls the bars up, reaches in and takes the packages of money, and then he starts to retrace his step towards the front door. He's about to leave when he looks towards the first teller's window. Medium shot rows of coins on top of the counter. Medium shot Mike. He takes some of the bills that he's crammed into his shirt pocket, throws them away.
Gotta make room for silver.
He goes behind the teller's window and starts to cram rolls of coins into his pockets. Then suddenly his eyes look wild again as he looks up, his eyes scanning the room, and again, illogically, the same mixture of wisdom and paranoia.
Someone watching me?
He goes out in front of the teller's cage again and looks around.
Someone watching me?
He looks up towards the ceiling and around as if expecting to see someone.
Crazy feeling. Crazy. Oddball feeling. Like I knew someone was watching me.
And then his eyes narrow again in an awareness of danger.
Watching me. Trying to button me up someplace. Trying to trap me.
He looks around wildly again. Close shot, his legs. As he starts to run towards the door, he trips over some sort of lever close to the teller's cage. Flash shot, alarm bell. On the wall, as it begins to ring, long angle shot looking down at Mike as he stops by the front door and whirls around as the loud, dissonant clanging pierces the quiet. And then he whirls around and tries the front door again. It's locked. Series of flash shots. Bell, teller's cage, locked door, Mike's hand, Mike's face. Track shot Mike. As he races towards the alarm on the wall, he grabs the wires that extend from it and suddenly yanks on them, pulling them apart, and the bell abruptly stops. And then he whirls around and stares at the front door. Close shot door. It is now ajar. Medium shot Mike, as he goes back towards the teller's cage, grabs the coins and bills, crams them back into his pocket. He walks towards the open door and then out onto the street again, leaving a trail of silver and bills behind him. He sits down on the curb, unwraps a handkerchief from around his hand, wipes his face with it. He reaches into his pocket, takes out a crumpled fistful of bills, takes one out, grins at it, takes out the remnants of a cigar, sticks the cigar in his mouth and takes a bill, lights it.
Here's something I've always wanted to do. Always wanted to do this.
He takes the lit bill and lights a cigar with it. And then he lets loose of the burning bill and watches it flutter to the ground and disappear in ashes. Mike watches it burn, and then slowly his face looks tired, hopeless.
Big deal. So what? Big deal.
He lets his head hang a moment. Dissolve to exterior town square, night. Tight close shot, street lamp. As it suddenly goes on, camera then pans down for a shot of Mike on a bench looking up towards the light. And then he turns to look towards the street flanking the square. The lights have gone on in front of all the stores and in the windows. Close shot Mike, reacting. Medium long shot theater marquee as the lights go on around it. Track shot Mike. He walks across the street, stops by the ticket window, and then almost dreamlike speaks.
I'd like one to.
And then he stops, shakes his head, closes his eyes, realizing how ludicrous this is. He is about to go in when he suddenly stops and stares at a poster advertising the movie. Close shot poster, which shows an Air Force pilot in his coveralls advertising the movie. Medium close shot Mike, as he suddenly feels his own outfit and gradually makes the connection that the uniform of the man in the picture is similar to that which he wears.
Air Force. Air Force.
Then he whirls around, looking up at the sky.
Air Force. I'm Air Force.
He once again looks down at his coveralls and feels them, grabs at them.
Air Force. I'm in the Air Force.
Track shot Mike as he walks from the outside of the theater through the lobby on into the interior.
Hey, everybody. I'm in the Air Force. I remember that much. I'm in the Air Force. Anybody hear me? I'm in the Air Force.
And then once again, he rubs his eyes, runs a hand wildly across his face, and then suddenly surveys the theater. Cut to full shot, the theater. There are enough lights on to cast a soft orange glow through the room, and he looks around at the absolute vast emptiness of the place, and then he sits down, checks his watch, looks up at the big white screen with nothing on it. He looks at his watch again, and then settles down in the chair, his eyes closed, and he starts to succumb to the fatigue that sweeps over him.
Air Force. What does that mean? Was there a bomb or something? Is that what happened? That must have been it, a bomb. But if there was a bomb,
He looks around the empty theater now.
it would have destroyed everything, and nothing is destroyed.
Suddenly, he is aware of the lights lowering. He starts, and his eyes open wide in time to see the last of the lights go down. A long beam of white light shines for the projection booth, and suddenly on the screen appears a big introductory title, Cartoon Parade, with appropriate march music. Mike leaps to his feet, looks from the projection booth down to the screen. He suddenly starts to run from the aisle, shouting,
Hey, hey, somebody up there?
he stops in front of the projectionist light so that we get an almost nightmarish picture of the cartoons partially showing on his face and body as he screams,
Hey, somebody up there? Who's running the pictures? Can you see me? Can you see me up there? Hey.
Then he races back up the aisle, arriving at the rear of the theater, and he looks wildly around. And then he sees a door with a glass window, steps visible on the other side, long angle shot stairs as he races up them. Interior projection room. As he bursts inside, the picture is running from one of the two projectors, but the room is absolutely empty. Mike races over to the machine, bends down and peers at it as the film goes through, and he hears the sound of the cartoon music and voices. This is too much for him. He throws himself against the wall, peering out of the small circular hole that the picture shoots through. Long angle shot through the hole of the vast empty theater. Interior projection booth. He turns around, goes out the door, stumbles down the steps, angle shot downstairs. He continues down the steps and out into the lobby again. Interior lobby. He stops for a moment and looks around the lobby, medium long shot popcorn machine that is at this moment making popcorn. Close shot Mike as he closes his eyes, shakes his head, and then he opens them. His eyes go wide. He starts to run towards the camera, coming up very close and almost at the point of impact as we cut away to tight two shot of Mike and a mirror as he smashes his face and hands against it and then recoils from the reflection, backs off a few feet, and then looks at the mirror on the opposite side of the room. The combination throws off reflections almost to infinity. He looks from left to right, staring at the hundreds of Mike Ferrises who ape him in his every movement, and then he stops and looks across at the refreshment stand where the popcorn continues to pop in the big container. This too is more than he can stand. His face screws up like a small child about to cry, and then he shouts,
Oh my God. Oh my dear God.
He stumbles through the lobby and out into the street, exterior street. He stumbles down the street aimlessly now, intent only on moving, not finding. His footsteps start to drag, and finally he stops, sits down on the curb, buries his face in his hands, rubs his eyes, and then he looks up to once again find himself looking through the drugstore window. The magazine that he'd been reading lies on the floor face up, high angle shot, looking down through the window, distorting the cover of the magazine in such a manner as to make the lettering appear big and irregular. And once again, the title slaps at him across the face, The Last Man on Earth. He rises slowly, backing away from the window, shaking his head. He turns and races across the street. Suddenly then, he stops abruptly as the light on the corner changes to red, and he instinctively comes to a halt, and then he stops dead, realizing once again the ludicrousness of it. He begins to laugh. The laughter becomes convulsive, wild. All the way across the street, he continues it. Track shot. As he goes by all the stores that we've been introduced to, as he goes by each one, a sound emanates from it, a sound way out of proportion to what it actually should be. When he passes the pool hall, we hear the mammoth bowling alley sound echoing from it. From in front of the theater comes a cacophony of music and laughter. And from the drugstore, there's a fizzling, bubbling sound of drinks. And from the record store, the dissonant, blaring sound of music. As each noise joins in, it becomes mumbled and part of a big morass of noise. Gradually, the very dimension of it is so frightened. It so frightens and shocks Mike that he begins to back away from each store as he passes. It is as if being assaulted on all sides. He stumbles against a street post, whirls around, frightened, stares at it, and then suddenly, almost supplicatingly, throws his arms around it and buries his face against it. He starts to sob.
Won't somebody help me? Won't somebody please help me?
And then his sobs subside, and he stands there, breathing deeply. His eyes slowly open, sweat stands out on his features. He looks haggard, desperate, close to cracking. The noise, somehow, for no apparent reason, suddenly stops, and there's a deep, dead, all-pervading silence again. Mike's eyes travel up the post, stare up towards the sky. He squints against the sun.
Who's watching me? Who's looking at me? Who's looking at me?
He looks down towards the street, long shot the street. He moves to the middle of the road again, still looking up towards the sky, and then, as if suddenly seeing an adversary, begins to run. Close shot, store window. As Mike backs into it, trying to get inside, reaching for the door and missing, and then slamming his face against the front pane. Close shot Mike's face and eyes, looking from inside the store outside towards him. His eyes go wide and he starts to scream. Close shot over Mike's shoulder at a huge eye looking at him. Medium shot Mike as he starts to run away from the store again. The camera takes in a shot of an optometrist sign with a huge eye that Mike had seen. Track shot Mike as he runs back towards the post. He grabs it and holds on tight, and then he looks down. His hands have touched a button and he looks down at it. Tight close shot a button with a sign over it. Push to turn green. Medium shot Mike as he looks away towards the light. Close shot the light. Medium shot. And then suddenly Mike slams the palm of his hand against the button and punches it over and over again.
Somebody help me. Help me. Help me.
Close shot the light as it flashes from red to green, from green to red, from red to green, over and over again. Close shot Mike's hand as he keeps pushing the button, his voice sobbing, screeching, plaintive, frightened.
Somebody help me. Please. Please help me.
Dissolve to out of focus on his hand. Close shot in focus, his hand. Pushing a button on an instrument panel. The camera dollies away until both the back of the panel and Mike's face are on a small television screen. Long shot down a line of officers in a viewing room as they intently watch the screen. We hear Mike's voice as if it coincides with the red light that flashes brilliantly on and off over the viewing camera. Mike's voice.
Please. Please help me. Help me.
A general, obviously in command, turns to his aides on his right.
Clock him. Get him out of here quick.
Officer 2 reaches over for a hand mic, pushes a button.
Release the subject on the double.
Interior, large, hangar-like room. In the center of it, illuminated by a couple of spots in an otherwise dark room, is a small, hermetically sealed metal box about 6 by 5 feet and about 5 feet high. A sliding panel is pushed back. Several Air Force men reach down and start unstrapping Mike and then carefully lift him through the hole. A white-clad medical officer begins to remove electrodes that have been taped to his body at various points. By this time, Mike has stopped speaking. His eyes are half closed. He breathes deeply and irregularly, slumps forward in his seat. Close shot, his right fist, smashed against the instrument panel. Extremely tight close on his fist, and the broken glass covering a clock on the panel, which reads 6:15. Medium group shot the Air Force men as they remove him.
Be careful. He's cut his hand on that clock glass there.
Long shot general and staff. As they hurriedly approach the scene, their footsteps ringing hollowly on the concrete floor.
He's all right, sir. Delusions of some sort. I guess that's it. He's coming out of it now.
Fine. You get all your data recorded?
Yes, sir. Every bit of it.
Did you get him clocked? That's also me. Yes, sir. 484 hours, 6:30, 36 minutes. Good. I'd like to get a look at all the data when they're complied. I'd like to get the reaction chart on him too.
The press, sir?
He points towards the opposite side of the room. Long shot 3 or 4 members of the press as they stand waiting expectantly. Group shot general and the others.
On the run, if they don't mind. I want to talk to Ferris.
Yes, sir.
He motions towards the press and beckons them over as the general, the medical officers, and the others start walking in the opposite direction towards Mike Ferris, who lies on a stretcher at the very far and opposite side of the room. Track shot with the general and the reporters as they join him and start to walk across the room towards Ferris.
You consider it a success, sir? Very much so. He's been alone in that box for something in the neighborhood of 484 hours, which is roughly equivalent to a trip to the moon, several orbits and then back. And then this was a simulated trip to the moon. Is that right, General? All for intent and purpose.
What about those wires attached to him?
Electrodes, All of his reactions have been charted and graphed. Respiration, heart, action, blood pressure.
At this moment, they reach a point some 10 feet away from where Mike Ferris lies on a stretcher, attended by a couple of medics. The voices become low.
What happened to him toward the end? Just before he pushed that button or whatever it is.
What happened to him was that he cracked. We assumed delusions of some sort, but I'll tell you something, gentlemen. You spend 2.5 weeks all by your lonesome in a 5-foot square box without ever being able to hear a human voice other than your own. I'll give you especially good odds that your imagination would run away with you too, just as obviously as his did.
One of the medics looks up, motions the general over. The general takes a few steps until he's very, very close to Mike.
How do you feel, son?
I feel much better, sir. Sorry about toward the end.
What was it like, Ferris? Where did you think you were?
Someplace I don't want to visit again. Town without people, without anybody.
And you had to get out that town, didn't you?
Sure did. What was the matter with me? Just off my rocker, huh?
Just a kind of nightmare, Ferris, that your mind manufactured for you.
The reporters lean forward, straining to overhear this conversation.
You see, Ferris, we can feed stomachs with concentrates. We can supply microfilm for recreation, reading, and even movies of a sort. We can pump oxygen in, waste material out.
The camera now moves around so that it is now shooting just over the heads of all the men assembled and is looking at the box in the background, which is on the periphery of the light.
But there's one thing we can't simulate. That's a pretty basic need. Man's hunger for companionship, the barrier of loneliness. That's one we haven't licked yet.
At this moment, the medics help Ferris to his feet. He stands there motionless for a moment, as if testing newfound legs, and then he looks around towards the open hangar door at the night sky.
Next time, though, won't be just a box and a hanger, will it?
No, Mike. Next time you'll really be alone.
There's a long, thoughtful silence as Mike takes a few steps towards the hangar door. He pauses for a moment near the box. A side has been removed so that he's staring directly into the control panel where the broken clock can be seen still reading 6:15. Close shot Mike as he reacts. Close shot cockpit as the camera pans over the broken clock, a microphone which hangs by the cord, a small microfilm apparatus, etc. Medium close shot Mike as he looks away and then continues to walk over to the hangar door. He slowly looks up towards the sky, and the camera sweeps up for a long shot of the moon hanging bright and lustrous in the sky.
Don't go way up there. Next time it won't be a nightmare or a dream. Next time it'll be real. So don't go away. We'll be there in a little while.
And then he starts to walk out in the night, followed by the others. The camera begins to slow pan back into the room until it is shooting on the box, squatting empty, impassive in the empty room.
The barrier of loneliness, the palpable, desperate need of the human animal to be with his fellow man.
And dissolve to night sky, the moon and the stars.
Up there is the vastness of space, in the void that is sky. Up there is an enemy known as isolation. It sits there in the stars waiting with the patience of eons, forever waiting in the twilight zone.
Fade to black, the end.
You have just returned from the 6th dimension. All right. And in this dimension, there is an Angel Peterson that has joined us. But cool. I'm like mixed, like, do you guys want to talk about it right now? Do you need a break to go to the restroom, get a drink, all that stuff? Because what do you guys think, or thoughts and all that jazz?
I wished I would have watched the episode.
I watched the episode and there are some differences. Surprise.
Oh, I haven't watched it recently, so Aaron, please enlighten us.
I watched it today, and don't quote me because I wasn't very closely watching the details, but I think this whole scene with the bank where he's stealing the money was not in the show.
Mm-hmm.
And here's a little
I
fun
did not
fact.
remember that. It's been years since I've seen it, but
I read the first page of the script and then I listened to the show and was like, wait a minute, there's a difference here. So I've been looking up trivia while behind the scenes here. In this script, he says at the very beginning that the Twilight Zone is the 6th dimension. And in all other episodes, it is the 5th dimension.
Mm-hmm.
So they apparently redubbed the
Oh.
intro for this episode.
That's neat.
And I was watching a video right before we went on about basically his pitch video of the pilot to other people, and he's like to the advertisers, like of the pilot. And in that one, at the beginning, it's somebody else's voice that does the intro. You're entering the 6th dimension. It's not him and him standing there as it like often what is. So I'm like, oh, that's different. That's cool.
Yeah, I heard they tried a few different people, including Orson Welles. And then we're like, let's just go back to Rod. His voice is unique enough.
That's cool. That's cool. Yeah, I want to talk about the script, but I guess we can talk more about the story so far. Like, what do you guys think of it?
I think you can tell that it's a writer that wrote it. I mean, like a script writer, because it's so full of these big, lovely, luscious words and action description. It's clear this guy maybe wrote it as a narrative first and then like kind of went back and maneuvered into a script. Although he had apparently written scripts for radio drama before, but I think he was originally like a fiction writer. It's like a straightforward short story script fiction writer.
And this one's obviously been like rewritten into this nice, very clean format for us. So I wonder what the original paper looked like. And I was looking online while we were reading right now to see, like, did he direct them? I couldn't find like a director title for some of the episodes. That kind of said creator. I know he like was the writer for most of them, and this one for sure, and like the producer on them. So I'm guessing he also directed it. So that would show why some of those maybe shot directions are in this script and different stuff, and all of that detail and stuff. Because it almost feels like transcribed, but
yeah, I was just reading, but you can tell some places it's not, where he's talking about this buoys him up, he's more resolved. He's the dissonance, the raucous dissonance of the early morning silence, like that usually you read in an action description. And it's beautiful.
I guess this goes to the conversation. Go ahead, Aaron.
Sorry, I just read a little trivia snippet that his first attempt at the Twilight Zone was given to Desilu Productions. And they made the first one, and then that greenlit the series, or at least the pilot. So the first Twilight Zone was not a Twilight Zone episode. It was something in a Desilu variety show, I think.
Oh, wow.
Don't quote me on that because I'm just quoting. I did not fact check.
That's interesting.
And Desilu, if you do not know, is the Desi Arnaz and Lucille Ball production company.
Oh,
And just so everyone was like,
I couldn't help but think of Petra as I was reading through.
Very different. Oh, sorry, there's a delay there, Vicky.
Yeah, I was like,
continue.
everybody froze, but me. I slipped into this.
Oh, then it was my fault if everyone
Twilight
did it.
Zone.
Vicky, can you say that again? Or something in Petra?
I couldn't help but think of Petra as I was barreling through the multi-syllabled words. I think she'd be proud.
Description.
Yeah, I don't think she wouldn't have to correct me too many times.
And this is another one. Of course, you need to find the empty set. Like, if somebody wanted to make with a small budget or small cast, they could, because this was mainly just one person in an empty area until the end. Then they had everything come together to show it's part of a larger world. I felt like it kind of applies today with kind of like the VR world a little bit, like virtual reality, or like how long someone could do that and stuff.
Oh yeah.
Hey, yes, Kat.
So this is the first episode of the Twilight Zone, correct?
Correct.
And I don't know when the script itself was written, but it aired, 1959, I think. And the first, Sputnik was 1957. So presuming that the script was written a few years before they filmed it and aired it, it would have timed really, at the same time or very near the time of Sputnik. So I was looking at the plot thinking, watching it now after having, moon landings and landings on Mars and things that are, we're actually been out to space, and the audience for this show would not have been out in space yet, or at least very, very, except for the one Sputnik and maybe a couple things in the US afterwards, but we certainly hadn't been to the moon yet. And so I found it very fascinating watching this episode with the time lens of now versus the time lens of then.
Right. It had that. I was thinking about that same thing and I looked it up. So we didn't get to the moon until 69. So 10 years later. And it has that near future beware of technology kind of angle that Black Mirror has. So that's how that tied in for me.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, Kat, because it's also like what their worries would be at that time. Like, what could this do on the human mind, or what would it be like this trip that they've never taken at that time before?
And if anybody's seen the movie Moon, that would be an excellent sequel to this, like a direct sequel, almost like, 50 years later, direct sequel.
That would be a good double feature or whatever. Yeah. It has, is it Sam Rockwell? Is that who's name? Yeah. Something else I was gonna say, I forgot. So someone else. Some thoughts.
I want to go back to what I said at the beginning. Philip K. Dick is who I wanted to call out. The author, Philip K. Dick, who wrote Minority Report, Total Recall, all those good things. Also very, very similar in style to Twilight Zone and his stories in his work. I was just looking up trivia, as I mentioned, and one of the things I found out in that research was that Rod Serling was doing a lot of, when he was in the service, and I think he was in the Air Force, he did a lot of experiments, and he got paid, like, here's $100 up front, you'll get the other $500 if you survive, kind of parachute experiments, and apparently went through a lot and had a lot of PTSD. So that all directly ties into this script. I can see where that's coming from. And I believe I read that this was not originally going to be the first episode, but it was the one that appealed most to sponsorship because it didn't have anything totally out there sci-fi wise or monster wise. This is all based in reality.
Yeah, that's what I saw that in the research. She like, this is one of the few that doesn't have one of those supernatural elements to it. And with that, like you brought up, he had military background. Like this shows for other writers to like where they say write what you know. Like again, he's never been in this experiment, this box, or gone to the moon and all this other stuff. So he's never been alone in this place where no one else exists. But he knows he's coming from a military background and military experiment. So he's trying to like, you take half of what you know and then mix it together in with the new stuff, creative stuff.
Yeah. I think he wanted to show in this like the dangers of the psyche of the serviceman because his was so messed up apparently.
Yeah, I didn't know that. That's cool.
Yeah. And he ended up dying at 50 years old.
Wow.
Do you know of what or why or how?
It looks like a series of heart attacks.
Yike.
Morbid. My mind is like, you write an episode, a Twilight episode about that. Someone has a series of heart attack, like almost like what would be like a twisted story that would actually be. I don't know. That's messed up, but
that's the second to last season of Roseanne is what you're describing.
Okay.
If anybody knows that reference.
Yeah.
I also looked up. Okay, this is my own little conspiracy theory that I was picking up during the movie. I have no basis of fact for this. But I noticed it during the show and I noticed it during the script read that the town that they are in, briefly, real quick. The town that they filmed this in is later became famous for being the town of Hill Valley in Back to the Future. So the town he's roaming around in is Hill Valley. So fun fact.
Do you mean like the
And-
set of Warner Brothers or
Yeah, the Universal set
the Universal?
for Hill Valley. Well, before it was Hill Valley, obviously. But I noticed in the script and in the show, they call this town Oakwood. And I was wondering if there was any reference for that, why he specifically named it Oakwood. What was that? Because I lived in an apartment complex for a few months called the Oakwood Complex, which is here in LA. And it's like basically across the street from Universal Studios where the Hilldale is. So I looked it up to see, because the Oakwoods apartments are known for being empty but fully furnished apartments. So I'm like, I wonder if the founder of
where
Oakwoods named it after
Actors
this.
and screenwriters live as well,
Yeah.
because our family used to live at the Oakwoods as well. It's like where people stay.
It's where the child actors live for the pitch seasons.
Mhm.
But it's no longer called the Oakwoods, that particular campus. But I looked it up, and that guy created the Oakwood campus in 69 or somewhere around there. So it would be viable that he could be like, I'm going to name it after the empty furnished town of Oakwood from Twilight Zone episode 1. That's my theory.
I like that theory.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I don't know. There's something you said that sparked something, but now I already forgot it. I'm sorry. What are you guys' other favorite episodes of Twilight Zone? I mean, without giving stuff away, if that's possible. Like, if not, then I guess
Well,
don't mention it.
the infamous There's Something on the Wing.
Yep.
Oh.
Bill Shatner. Yeah.
There's one I remember when I was, it's from when I was a kid, so I might be getting it wrong, but when everyone was getting facial surgery to look the same.
Yeah, I love that one. That's so
Yeah.
good.
I'd like to see that again. I feel
Yes.
like it would maybe be relevant to today.
Oh, totally.
There's one I
with-
can't remember. Oh, so go ahead.
Vicky.
There's one with Beau Bridges. It's the second round of Twilight Zone. And he's got ants in the barn, and they're like very super intelligent. I think they're alien. I don't know. But yeah, and I think it's actually 2 episodes that it actually is continued. And it's disturbing to me because I actually was traumatized by red flying ants. I was riding a horse and I stopped on this hill that was big enough to hold me and the horse. I got down off the horse and I was talking to my friends, and they said, and there's red flying ants on your back. And I'm turning to go, yeah, right. And I see the horse. And when I looked down and saw them on me, this is weird, you guys. As soon as I looked down, they all started biting me at once. It was very traumatic.
Oh.
I'm good with ants now, but that episode was very disturbing to me.
Oh,
Oh.
I was thinking of the one where I don't remember if it was the movie or the 80s or the original series. And I don't remember the premise or the name, so this is very helpful. But I remember there was like a girl and a boy, boy meets girl. They fell in love, and one of them's going to go on a long-term space mission. And
Oh,
he
yeah.
decides not to stay with the girl, and she decides to, or vice versa. So they end up like one of them's
Wait,
really
don't
old
say
and one
that
of them's
part,
really
don't say that part,
young.
Don't say that part.
I
Yeah.
didn't say anything. What you're
Um,
talking about.
It's
sounds
so
like the
good.
one,
So
the-
good. Like certain ones
the
have
story
more
about the
emotional
person
heart
who
than
cut her
others.
hair. And
What was
Oh.
that, Angelina?
it sounds like the story about the couple who, the woman needs a comb and the man needs a wallet or something.
The Gift
And
of the
she
Magi.
sells her
What's the
hair.
name?
Oh.
Okay. Sells her hair to buy him a wallet, and he uses all his money to buy her a comb.
Yeah, I like that.
Yes.
So Alien Ants, that must be what Alien Ant Farm was named
Oh, the
after
band.
that.
Oh,
Yeah.
Maybe. There,
Maybe.
I don't know if it's the sequel of that episode, but there's something that reminds me of that one that is in Twilight Zone where almost is like point of view of like Aunt Sides in a cabin or something. I don't want to give away other stuff than that, but maybe it's not the one that you're talking about, Vicky, hooked to it. But
It was on a farm. He was away from people.
yeah,
So maybe.
maybe.
And there's one from the movie where it's a senior's home, and at night they're all like children. They all go out to swing on the swings and play games and stuff. That's a very
think
cool
that- I think
episode.
that's called Kick the Can.
Yeah, that's the one.
One was cool. Talking about, I think like I've watched the whole series, but I don't think I've ever seen the movie.
It was like an 80s movie.
Yeah. So you guys
Okay.
say it's good, huh? It
I
lives
mean,
up
it
Yeah.
to
gets a
the-
little 80s
baseball.
cheesy, but it still has the same quality. Yeah.
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 Did you guys see the new Twilight Zone series by Jordan Peele?
I have
No,
not
but I
yet.
want
No.
to. I don't know where to. I
I saw it. It's on Amazon Prime via Freevee, so it has commercials.
oh,
So
wonder if that's
Freevee
available
has
in
it.
Canada. I'll have to
Good
look.
question. That's how I watched Twilight Zone today. Was Freevee.
That's good.
I paid for whatever was supposed to have it in Canada, and they said when it was coming out, and then it came when it was supposed to come out. It wasn't there, so I was mad. I was very mad because it was just for Twilight Zone that I got it. Oh well.
And I haven't seen this, but I guess later Rod Serling did a sort of a reboot called The Night Gallery,
Mm.
which was,
Yes.
I think, more horror specific. I never saw
Wow.
it, so you tell me, Vicky.
That was very cool. I really enjoyed Night Gallery, and you're right. It was more down the creepy kind of thing rather than this
This would be speculative fiction, I think, that umbrella
yeah.
over weird sci-fi.
Okay. Like I'm like now I'm like super interested. I'm not a super horror guy, but otherwise like now I'm super interested to see more from him. Like,
Yeah.
and one thing doing research while we're doing this, that it's based off of a novel, a French novel, but he wrote the screenplay for Planet of the Apes. Rod Serling.
I saw that today. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm like, oh, that makes sense. That tracks.
Neato.
Any other Twilight Zone-y thoughts, you guys, for screenwriting or acting?
Well, there's just no doubt that Rod had an extremely active imagination.
And he's also an activist, and it says like that this is the way he felt, and he was tired of like what was it called, advertiser interference on some of the stuff, but he's felt like this is a way he could get a lot of the things he cares about and stuff into the media without them seeing it so overtly or knowing, and put it out there. So,
Huh.
I did see he made a version of the Christmas Carol that was very overtly political.
Hmm.
And he was protesting the Vietnam War.
Oh, wow.
And that makes me think too of the one that's called, I believe it's The Eye of the Beholder, where you've got a person who's wrapped in bandages in her face, and they've been doing
Yeah.
surgery after surgery to make her look beautiful, and the surgeries fail time and
Yep.
time again. And I won't
We'll see what
give away
happens.
the ending,
Yeah.
but
I
you know,
remember
really-
that.
it really calls into question, how do you define beauty, and why is it important in society, and it's not just beauty in this sense too, but just in general how people look. I mean, we judge so often by how someone looks, and
Yeah.
that's the type of those messages too, where there's, if you want to call into racism or sexism or anything else, all those isms, the morals come through time and time again in the Twilight Zone and a lot of the other science fiction shows that followed after it. I mean, even like Star Trek, there's a moral at the end of each one of those usually, or Outer Limits, another one that's more contemporary maybe with Twilight Zone. But yeah, a lot of the sci-fi shows, the ones I like, tend to have some sort of link back to a message that's, you know, a problem we're having in our society today.
Mhm.
And Jacob, that episode you were referring to earlier is called Time Enough at Last.
Wow. Okay. I like that title. That title's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
But yeah, it totally applies. Thanks. The episode you're talking about, Kat, I think is the one Angel was trying to think of. But also like that is like a type that feels like, I don't know, like should be essential watching. Like they have essential read lists for kids and stuff. Like whether the parent shows it or school shows it, I feel like everyone should watch that episode just to make the world a better place. But
I was just looking into like what it inspired, and it said theme park attractions. I'm like, what? And then I remembered, oh my gosh, yes, the Twilight Zone Tower of Terror. I never went on it because it was a drop ride, but maybe you can speak to that, Jacob.
it is awesome. But it was both.
Yeah, it was
Yeah,
at California
it was a
Adventure.
California Adventure before. Now that's a Guardians ride. They've redone it, but the Tower of Terror is still in
Still in Orlando.
Yeah, in Orlando. I think there is also one in Paris. But yeah, so you go through the dimension and you have that eye and the clock and everything, and the window on like Cat's screen, like that go by you, and then yeah, you go through some dimensions. Just kidding.
I remember when I was a kid, I remember Twilight Zone, Hitchcock, and The Outer Limits, and those three were the ones that I wanted to stay up for all the time. So, and I get them mixed up. Even now, I thought, isn't Hitchcock a part of this?
He had his own
Mhm.
show, yeah, that was similar.
Hitchcock Presents.
They all had some sort of similar, I guess, just the unique spin on things.
Yeah, and that's what Rod Serling said at the beginning of his like pitch. He's all, and I think like audience will like this because they like storytelling. They'll watch it because they watch stories, and then I think the next day they'll go buy your product. But he's like saying like what the people want. Like you said, you stayed up for this. You'll stay up for a well-told story. That like is well made, and as Kat said, even it can have a good message or whatever. So
And I was just reading that.
Just gonna go ahead. What, Morgan?
It's all fight.
Is Black Mirror supposed to be like a modern day version of Twilight Zone? Because it's very, very similar.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think, it's not specifically the same franchise, but yes.
I'm sure it was
sure they were inspired, like you're saying.
Although Black Mirror doesn't have anything supernatural.
That's what I say. It's more. It almost seems like more the danger future side of tech. That's what it almost feels like for Black Mirror to me. It's
like Outer Limits was more sci-fi, but that same feel to a movie or to a story.
And I was just reading to someone's point about his writing, that after this, he did a Western series and they asked him to put more action and adventure in it instead of focusing so much on character. And when he started to do that, the show failed.
Let him do what he's gonna do.
I just noticed your short, Aaron, almost goes in with your spirals.
Yeah, that's why I was doing this. I just see me spiraling.
And then your eyeball just pops out. It's kind of crazy.
Eyeball with the microphone. That's fine.
Why I wore this shirt?
Good call.
Let's say my Twilight Zone style show that I love to watch and stay up late for was Tales from the Crypt.
Yeah.
More specifically horror, a little more campy.
I think I should watch those now because I'd probably like them.
I would probably laugh at them now, but before I was like, oh, this is terrifying. So terrifying.
And going back to Black Mirror for a moment, if anybody hasn't watched the Black Mirror series or anthology, like I would say for a lot of people, skip the first episode.
Yeah, everybody skip episode 1.
That turns a lot of people off from the anthology and they don't want to finish that one. But
you can watch it later after a few episodes.
If you watch all of them and you want to watch that last or in the middle of it, once you know what the vibe is of a lot of them, go for it. But
for those who know, I watched the first episode with my parents thinking, oh, I heard this show is good. Let's
Oh,
watch
no.
episode 1. Oh my God. Oh God.
There's a new season coming out. It looks amazing.
Really? Oh, that's exciting news.
Mhm.
I'm excited.
Yeah, they just released the trailer.
Have you guys all played through the Black Mirror
Bandersnatch.
Netflix Choose Your Own Adventure? Yeah.
Yeah,
that was good.
Bandersnatch. Right? Bandersnatch?
Yeah, I did it twice in a row. I definitely got 2 different endings, but that's it.
I think I tried
But-
to watch all of them.
Did you do it purposefully to get different endings, or did you like?
I did.
Yeah. No, that's kind of cool. Bringing the choose your own adventure from books down to media.
And I
Yes,
love
do like
doing
that they're
I'd read them with my fingers in all of the little spots so I could go back and keep going through every single one.
I believe they had to not use the terminology because Choose Your Own Adventure is a franchise brand and they were coming out with their own show. So we're like, you can't
Oh,
use that phrase.
huh.
That's a strange thing.
Did they ever?
But that's a fun style I'd like to learn how to write.
Well, if you go on Netflix, they have a bunch of shows like that. But again, some of them feel a little more staccato or static, like, oh, we're waiting for this answer. Or like you watch and go, oh, the answer doesn't matter. So I think it's still, but Bandersnatch was awesome. I think it worked very well on that one. But the people can still work and explore and find, but the cost of it though, too, like that you have to make so much more. Yeah, kind of like video games where they have all these different cinematics, at least more free roaming ones. Like you don't even know if the player's ever going to go over there or go over there, and you still gotta build out
But that
scenarios. For it.
said, you've got each person probably watching it an average of 3 times. Well, I don't know. I'm just guessing.
Yeah,
I gotta
and then
go back and
hopefully
watch
again,
that.
Definitely.
hopefully again, it's a conversation piece. Like you talk to other people. What ending did you get? Oh, what do you get it? And you guys can
Mhm.
talk and get more people to watch it. Like
That's
right now,
perfect.
we're all talking about Bandersnatch because it was,
Hmm.
unique and great and well done.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay.
Could say the X-Files is similar to Twilight Zone in some of the episodes.
For sure. I'm sure they directly Easter egged it at some point. I don't know if that's a fact. I'm just
Mhm.
guessing they would. But like I did see yes, it's a direct inspiration of it inspired us. Apparently it inspired Toy Story 4, but I haven't seen that one yet, so don't spoil it.
Really?
Just a number of other things.
For some that may not have watched the series you just mentioned, Morgan, the name is just dropping me for the moment. Is it all to do with
Sorry?
aliens? What?
The
Outer
X-Files,
Limits?
no.
X-Files, yeah, my brain just already
X-Files is not just about aliens.
cool. Wanted to
It's,
say that out there for anybody else that has.
In fact, it wasn't
Yeah.
originally. That sort of evolved.
Yeah, an X-File is anything that is not solved.
Right.
And it could be supernatural, science, whatever.
I really enjoy the campy episodes of the X-Files. There was
Yeah.
like one where it was like, help me out, Morgan. It was black and white, and I think there was a monster of the week, and he was obsessed with Cher.
Yeah.
Is that the right? Yeah. One of the funnier,
Yeah.
better episodes.
He like wrote comic books and the comic book character had come to life or something.
There's werewolves. There's
Bad Blood
undeveloped
is my favorite.
twins.
The one where they're trying to figure out if vampires are real. And it's more of a funny, campy episode where Scully sees a totally different version than Mulder does. So they're like going back and forth, and it ends up like they're like poison in the pizza or whatever. It's a really funny episode.
Yes.
The episode I laughed the hardest at was maybe a direct reference to the ants episode of the Twilight Zone, because it was all about cockroaches.
Mm,
Oh yeah. And that one they actually have a cockroach that goes across the screen randomly in
remember
the
that.
episode. So you actually think a cockroach is going on your television screen.
Oh, yuck.
that's awesome.
I watched
That's
that
awesome.
live, and my parents thought something was wrong with me because I had never laughed out loud before. And I was in the other room dying.
I would not have been
Awesome.
laughing if it was cockroaches. like Vicky's ants. I'm the same with cockroaches. My gosh, that's just so disturbing. Bugs.
I was surprised with because Canada, we don't really have them. Being in LA and going for walks at night, and they chase. They like those cockroaches are coming after my feet.
And some of them fly. That's the terrifying.
I thought that they would be like scattering away, but no, they're like, oh, it's a new foot. Let's go investigate.
Friend!
Go away. I just scream and jump and try and get past.
One thing this episode really reminded me of is I Am Legend. Just
Okay, yeah.
the beginning of it, where he's all alone and there are the mannequins, and I guess a similar
I liked
not being
that.
around other people.
Hmm.
But
I was also
not-
thinking recently the Umbrella Academy.
Mhm.
There
That's
is one
another-
character who goes into the future and nobody's there, and he like befriends a mannequin,
Oh,
and that's his girlfriend.
right.
You know, that brings me back to a line when I heard it originally when I
They
watched
look-
it today, and then I read it again in the script, that Mike makes some comment to the mannequin that he's like, I like quiet girls. You know what I mean? Oh no.
Yeah.
No.
It's a real thing, though. I mean,
Kisses his lips and then his fingers and then kisses. I'm like, no, 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 no.
Yeah.
I find it
So-
interesting too how some of the themes that show up, that like the storylines and the odd little quirks and twists, they might have, I'm sure, occurred in literature before Twilight Zone, but you see some of the same ones over and over again, like this one being being all alone. I mean, we have it in like the movie The Martian, where he's stuck on Mars and the rest of it accidentally abandoned him, and how he's got to A, survive, but also B, survive with being alone. Just you can put a nice direct line right back to Twilight Zone on things like that. And the other thing I was thinking about too is, even though the plots, a lot of times plots get reused all the time. I mean, obviously there's a classic boy meets girl plot, right? We see that all the time. But in this one, there's a lot of fear that just kind of builds up. And he's not nervous at the beginning, and then he gets gradually more and more nervous, and then the audience gets a little bit more nervous at trying to figure out what's going on. And I keep thinking that writers today have to be even more creative, because we've seen a lot of these same plots over and over again. And how do you put yet another new twist on top of all the ones that we built up from? The ending on this one surprised me, because he comes out and he's not the ending, not the part about him being in the box, but the part of when he recovers. He's like, okay, so I'm not alone anymore. Okay, I'm okay now, and I still want to go to the moon. And I wasn't sure how realistic that was. Maybe back then it was, but having seen all the other things since then, I wonder if that would have actually happened. If this had happened, if that would have been the actual reaction.
I was having maybe similar thoughts at the same time. Like when he was looking up at the sky, I was almost thinking of conversation for after, like, what do you guys think he was thinking or feeling at that time? Like he's scared, doesn't want to go alone, doesn't want to go and do that. And I think I'm guessing it's kind of from like Rod Serling's background in the military and stuff, to like give the presentation of like, even though, but this is just my own thoughts, but even though like they had that tough time there, they're still, brave and willing to go forward and go for it. But yeah, I was definitely wondering that too. Like that what did feel like a strange emotion there. But people are different. Some would want to, some would not, maybe. But yeah.
True.
was
And of course,
reviewing
we've seen
the-
a lot.
Okay.
I'm sorry, a lot on the whole psychology, the idea of psychology and having psychologists and going through everything has developed a lot more since the 1950s too. We've got a whole bunch more named illnesses, for example, just different psychological traumas, and PTSD being this would be, I think, a type of PTSD, being the box for however many days and hours he was in there. And so, modern psychology might have a very different view than psychology back in the 1950s.
I was rethinking about it. After the episode, rereading the script, they mention at the end that he has everything he needs except for companionship. And that kind of reflects in the town because he's able to get food, he's able to have entertainment, he has his own movie theater that just starts playing when he goes in there. He's got smokes if he wants them. He's got everything he needs. He's got his sustenance. The only thing he doesn't have is companionship. And that's exactly what's happening in the box. He's got the thing that's giving him the food, the tube, and he's got whatever he needs. The only thing he has is his button and his no companionship.
Yep.
So that was definitely intentional. I think now, after us all being in lockdown, we could understand his psyche a little bit better.
And it definitely affected a lot of people. And I guess reinforces the thought that, for most humans and stuff, it's necessary. And that they
I was
also say
reading
that
an
plays
article.
factor in the blue zones for how long people live. Lengths of life is like having that group around you of companionship as you're older. But sorry, continue, Aaron.
I read an article a while back about the food that they could give to astronauts, and they could give them the food kind of like Soylent, where they have all their nutrients and needs. But if it doesn't taste good, if it doesn't give them like warm, comfy home feelings, then they would have a psychological effect from that too. So they have to actually give them food that tastes good, that they will enjoy. Otherwise, it
Can they
messes with
just
them.
give them different flavored Soylent greens?
Yeah.
Soylent blue, Soylent purple. If you guys
Soylent
haven't
for
seen
Lent.
that movie either, that one's pretty good. And commentary. on
Yeah,
it.
last year I got to go to one of those VR exhibits where they took footage from the International Space Station, and then they put it, and you walk into a room, just a plain old black box with pointers all over the floor, which you can't see because you're wearing your VR headset, but you have a chance to walk around the International Space Station, and they have footage of the actual astronauts doing things. And one of the scenes I remember, they actually cutting an apple, a real apple, not, some paste thing that resembles an apple, but an actual real apple, and they're throwing it back and forth in the zero grav and watching it and having a good time and laughing and smiling. And that's what your comment made me think of. And then also the fact that just with VR technology, we can actually get up to some of these, recreate our own little holodecks essentially. And where what we can imagine, actually we can sort of reproduce now, which is with really convincing graphics. I mean, there were several times, like I tried to touch something was in front of me when I'm wearing these VR things, and there's nothing there. They're really, it's just an empty room, but it looks so real when it comes straight at you. And it makes me wonder, how that is going to change 20, 30, 40 years in the future, and whether or not people will be thinking about our current technology the same way we look back at, how they were thinking of different things in when they were doing Twilight Zone.
Think so.
I got myself a VR headset during lockdown to get out, and it really helped.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Because I'm just in my same living room, but now I'm in the space station. It's like bizarre and strange and awing.
One of my first experiences with the headset as at work, it was like one of the roller coaster ones, and went on it, and then and you feel this world, and I go to take it off, and there's a wall right there. I'm like, whoa, because I felt like the world was bigger or different.
Yeah,
And I'm sure
that's
we've seen the
really
videos of people trying to like tightrope, and they're like on the thing, and they're on the floor already, or they're on something that's like 1 inch off the floor, but then they are terrified that they're gonna fall. I don't know.
Back to twist endings. Somebody mentioned it. Kat, you mentioned The Gift of the Magi in the chat. That's by O. Henry. O. Henry was known for his twist endings. I don't know if he was the first, and I haven't read any, but I have a big old book of them. But I was given them because I liked twist endings.
I don't know O. Henry. Is it just novel writing?
It's
Or
O. Henry. And let's see,
is there also like movies and TV shows based on his stuff? Or
probably.
I don't
But
think so.
I don't know.
I have to read? That's
Yeah.
why I come here. You guys read it all.
His real name was William Sidney Porter, but he went by
Oh.
O. Henry.
But that's a good thing. Like if the books are really good and it's this type of thing, good twists, and movies and the TV shows haven't been made of his stuff yet. Huge opportunity.
Yeah, and
Oh.
Philip K. Dick did have an anthology series on Prime made of his short stories, and they usually have twist endings too. Philip K. Dick twist endings are real fun. I mean, if you know, if seen Total Recall, then you have an idea.
Yeah. Good example.
There's one that keeps showing up for me. It's a story called Ubic, which is short for ubiquitous. And I keep seeing, if you've read the story, the main character keeps seeing the word Ubic. And now I keep seeing the word Ubic. Actually, just in one place. But I was like, oh my God. It has a meaning that is different and is basically means you're in the Twilight Zone.
Have you guys seen the movie They Live or something like that?
No, but I have it. That's the one where it's Roddy Piper
With glasses, yeah.
with the glasses, and you can see the aliens when
Well,
you put the glasses on. I can't. I mean, his sun's
yeah.
blocked when he wears his.
Yeah, it's sunglasses. Yeah.
Sorry, I haven't seen it, so I don't know if that's a spoiler. It's on the cover.
Yeah.
I know. I hate when they do
Exactly.
stuff like that, and maybe it's pretty quick into it, but like there was a Terminator movie. I think I mentioned this before. That this is why I know, one of the reasons I no longer watch trailers if I know I'm going to watch a movie. I only watch a trailer if I have no clue about it, and I gotta go like, do I even like that genre or do whatever? But there's a Terminator movie that has a twist in the middle of it, and when you watch the movie, you can tell they worked so hard to do that line of not knowing that, not thinking that at all, and they show it in the trailer. And like that just makes me so angry. Like somebody see, oh, it's in the trailer, you can talk about it, but like it shouldn't have been there. Like, so the other one I say, like, it shouldn't be on the cover, but like if no one else was going to know it or buy that movie, because it was more indie and it's like not as much characters, and you could tell it's maybe smaller budget. I could see why they might do that. Just like, we have to do this for people to be even interested in watching this. And it's still good, even I guess if you know that, but I think it's better if you don't.
So erase the last 5 minutes from your brain if you're listening.
No, well, except go ahead and watch
Except
it.
for
They
us.
Live. No, it's going to be like an 80s dated looking film, but yeah. Cool.
Yeah, I do recommend watching the movie that they did. When I first saw it, it was actually in a drive-in, which was very cool. There's one of the, because like the Twilight Zone, it's many stories in the movie, and one of them has John Lithgow in it. That's very cool. And an airplane. That's all you're hearing from me.
I've heard the thing.
I think he
you guys
was
were talking
the,
about before, but go ahead.
I think you're talking about the remake of the one that was originally William Shatner.
Oh, maybe. I don't know.
Oh, well, that's good to hear. That one's also recommended. That they're both kind
Yeah.
of.
They were both good, and they both changed air flight forever.
Really?
Riding on an airplane,
Oh,
somebody says it at least once a flight.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Trying to think of the William Shatner one.
It was pre-Star Trek, so it was a young William
Yeah.
Shatner.
Yes. But he was on an airplane?
Same thing.
It was the same story. It was a remake.
I guess we both have homework, Vicky. You and I.
Because I
Oh, movie
remember him being in the original Twilight Zone series, but I don't remember him being in the airplane one. So that's really cool.
It's called Nightmare at 20,000 feet.
It most certainly is.
Do you guys have any?
Oh,
thoughts
there's a
on
new
Twi-
one. I guess they made a new one, and the new Jordan Peele one too.
Do you guys have any thoughts?
And there's a
on-
reference to it in Bridesmaids,
Oh,
which we did before.
Mhm. And someone, Kat, you mentioned The Martian. This one we read today, Twilight Zone, was not scheduled. It was not planned. We have saved a list of like scripts that have fewer roles. Because the one that was planned for today, like we don't look the number of roles before planning the scripts. And when we started to break it down, it had like 60 or 80 characters in it. So yeah, when we were gonna have 6 people, we're like, we'll pick a different one. And so we have The Martian is on our list of like, if this scenario comes up again, if we hit another one, like there's 80 people and we have 6 actors, then we might read The Martian at that time. So
Plus, I was super tired and I just didn't want to be casting 80 characters with a vehicle with a show I hadn't seen before. So it's all my fault.
no, it's all good.
We each play
we're gonna-
15 people.
Yes,
Mm.
exactly. I mean, in a way it's fun, but then it can also be confusing.
And
Were you
then
gonna
the
say something,
same
Kat?
thing would happen a bunch
Oh,
of
go ahead.
times that happened with Morgan, where I cast you talking to yourself.
Yeah, the gender on the report.
Sorry about that.
What do
You did well. You got it.
Mhm.
Oh, by the way, that when I was gone, I managed to catch the very tail end of the Buffy episode when I was in Hawaii. And I
Oh,
watched
right
it
on.
live. And then I came back and I rewatched the whole thing, and it took me 3 days because that was a long one, guys.
Yeah, that was
Is that a
really
subtle
good
hint that we should get
interview.
off? Is that this was supposed to
No,
be a short?
no. I was just like, wow, the interview in the front was an hour, and that was so good.
Mhm.
And then the
Mhm.
performance, and then the talk, and it was like, it just doesn't end because you can't stop talking about Buffy.
It's never ending. Yeah.
I'm
Yeah,
sure
that was
Buffy
a-
referenced the Twilight Zone once or twice.
I literally got stopped in the grocery store the other day. I was wearing my Buffy hat, and somebody came up to me. He's like, "Do you still binge watch the show?" And I'm like, "Of course."
Mhm.
I'm
That's
glad
awesome.
that people are still a fan of the show.
Definitely. I
Mhm.
know. I mean, yeah, still a fan of Buffy, but look at Twilight Zone, still a fan of that, and it's again
Oh yeah.
so good. They keep
Or I was
remaking
alive.
stuff. What
Wasn't there also like a Twilight Zone commercial? I remember like this phase of like, there's a lot of people that can do a Rod Serling impression. And I feel like somebody did it for like a hologram or something in one of those let's reanimate the dead commercials.
I feel like I remember seeing
Yeah.
that.
Hmm.
All right.
Should make a big
thoughts
list
or
of all the similar
insights
type.
on the like difficulty of writing twist endings, or
Well, now because so many people do it, it's more of a twist to not twist.
I guess you do the double twist, you do what they
Yeah.
think it is, but it's not really that.
Mhm.
Yeah. Interesting.
I watch a lot of movies with my son and my husband, and my son is 13, and like we'll watch an episode where when I first saw it, I would never have guessed the ending. And when he first sees that same episode, whatever show it is, he's like, and he'll voice, "I think this is going to happen," and it does. And I think this is going to happen, and it does. And I don't know if that's just because he's super smart or because he's just seen so many other things that we have already seen, that his brain is wired to think, what the next twist is. And I kind of wonder if that's a generational thing, because I'm sure it's not just him that can do that. But again, the twist we would have seen as kids, he's already seen all, a ton of them, and he's got them in his background. So it would be harder, I think, to fool him than it would have been to fool me at the same age.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, they
I think
now the writers do such a good job of like leading breadcrumbs. So now if you're like looking for breadcrumbs, you'll see them.
Exactly, because
And then there's shows that like leave fake breadcrumbs, and you're like, oh,
Ooh, some red herrings. Just
Yeah.
kidding.
Agatha Christie always got me on those, and reading her books, there were so many red herrings in there. I'm like, okay, if I read the book halfway and stopped, I have an idea of who the murderer would be, or whatever, the killer. But if I kept reading, they'd be like, oh, there's this person's lying, this person's lying, this person's lying. Now I have no idea who the murderer is. And so yeah, the same kind of thing is the false breadcrumbs that you're talking about. Very similar there.
So maybe we got to like the answer of the question I was kind of asking is like maybe like the Christie route is like to do more of like the false breadcrumbs, like you're saying, would be how they have to do twists these days to make it work for, like you're saying, the next generation. Interesting. Not have to.
Or
I
it's
mean,
like,
one of the
I just finished watching The Servant, which is M. Night Shyamalan's TV show.
Mm-hmm.
It's 4 seasons long, and you're like, okay, how's he going to do this? He can do it in like an hour and a half, and it's kind of okay sometimes. But like 4 seasons, can he do it? And it was, every episode was such a fine balance of like, I still don't know if this is imagined or real. They trick you back and forth a few times.
And what's it called?
It's called The Servant.
Okay. Hmm.
It's on
overall,
Apple
are you
TV.
happy with it?
So many.
I'm
For
happy
sure.
I watched it. There was one season that was a little weak.
Mhm.
And I do feel like maybe they had a 5th season planned and they wrapped it up kind of early. Because all of a sudden they explained a lot in the like
Mhm.
last 3 episodes, kind of like Penny Dreadful, if you saw that first couple seasons.
Well, I'm glad they had the opportunity to do that, at least,
Yeah.
and not leave things off. What do you guys think about that? Like the exposition tie up at the end, kind of like in here, they kind of at the end fill in all the questions of like where he was with, like with the general telling it with the reporters. You get all the information of the questions you might have had. How do you guys feel about that? Like,
It's a
I've-
little, I read earlier that when Rod Serling reread his script, he was unhappy with how much he gave Mike to monologue.
Mm.
And apparently the guy who played Mike when he filmed it was sick with a fever and he wanted to react his scenes. So Rod wanted to rewrite it. The actor wanted to react it. They weren't happy with it, but like, because he talks so much to himself.
yeah.
And I guess there's a lot more that he could have left unsaid. And then the exposition wouldn't have been so abrupt, I guess.
Mhm.
I personally don't like any cliffhangers. I like to know everything.
Then you would be unhappy with The Servant.
As far as writing style, to answer your question, Jacob, too, I've noticed been a sort of a trend in changing, like the Twilight Zone, each episode is essentially its own little, you can watch any of them in any order, pretty much.
Mhm.
And then more recently, you have story arcs that go across an entire season, or like some Babylon 5 goes across 4 seasons or 5 seasons, and then they kind of all wrap it up. So science fiction went from just single episodes to following characters as they, go from season to season. So you can't start by watching season 2 in a lot of modern shows now because you've missed all the setup from season 1. You can't just jump in here and there. And on the backside of that, because we were talking about leaving false breadcrumbs, sometimes they don't leave you any breadcrumbs. Like they have this arc maybe in mind, but they're not even going to hint at the details till you get to season 3. They know them, they have them in the back of their minds, but they're not even going to drop the hints till you get there, so that you have to keep following along. Game of Thrones would be another example of that. You have some basic characters, but you don't know much about most of them until way further down the line.
That's awesome. I feel like most important from like what you and I think Morgan was saying is that they know the answers to the question. Like I hate when, well, like I think Lost is maybe a good example for a bunch of things, but like one, like they go a whole bunch of breadcrumbs and you get super curious, what is going on? What is this going to be? But then the ending, it almost feels like they didn't really have that plan or knew that at the beginning, so it maybe doesn't.
Yeah, I've seen like requirements for writing contests where like if you're going to submit something, submit the full arc, your full arc idea for the 3 or 5 seasons you plan, because we don't want another Lost on our hands.
And some that maybe goes into log lines too for writers. Like sometimes, and again, some pros don't have to do log lines for other reasons, and people look at, do you write a log line before you write it? Do you write it after? But a lot of what I've heard, and you guys can debunk, is that in the log line, that is just for like the producer to be interested in reading your script or be willing to put money in it. So they say, basically say it all in that log line or whatever, and don't just like be so mysterious in your picture, because they'll be like, that's too vague and too much. It could be anything, and yeah, not interested. And a log line is a roughly 2-sentence description of a story or a pitch for a movie. I'm not explaining that well. I should just search it, look it up. There's a couple templates that they say to use. Somebody save me and answer this better than what I'm doing here.
And then after your log line, you write your treatment. I don't know if that's still a thing that people do. I know I studied writing treatments, and I read like beautiful treatment for Terminator, which totally changed my mind because I hated Terminator, but I loved Terminator 2. But the treatment for Terminator was so gorgeous and well written that you couldn't put it down. And it's like a treatment is maybe 3 or 4 pages. And you start with your log line, I believe, and then you go, your first paragraph is the opening scene, the visuals, completely detailed narrative style. And then you write a couple more paragraphs about like, this is what's going to happen in Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. And then you end with the closing scene in full visual detail.
That's awesome. Thank you. Was that one written by James Cameron?
It was.
That's cool. Cool. We're going to say something, Angel?
Just that I think I'm fading. I'm trying to.
Well, I was about to say it's good to wrap up. All right, cool, you guys. This was, I think, I don't know. It's a cool series, cool episode, and I think it led to a lot of good, conversation about all of this. So, any other final thoughts before we say good night, goodbye?
If anyone can think of other shows that are along this line, I love this sort of thing. So post it in Table Read Tuesday or text message me or whatever. Send me a message because I want
to people and say,
watch
if you have
more.
a show, put your favorite episode of Twilight Zone in the comments. If you have another show you like the Twilight Zone, put it in the comments and all that stuff. So
do you mean
subscribe, follow?
Do you also mean podcasts or audio dramas or just visual mediums?
Well, I don't know. Maybe.
No, like again, you like that one audio of that thing on Apple that's just audio. Remember?
Actually, when I was looking this up, there is a group that has audio dramatized the scripts for Twilight Zone. And there was one for this script.
Cool.
That's awesome. Didn't see that. But yes, Erin, also audio. So put a link to your podcast and the others in the comments, or I'll grab that.
Oh yeah, to your podcast. Yeah, do that.
And stuff.
Is that what your podcast is like? Can't speak.
Well, I'm in a number of podcasts, but the most well-known one is the No Sleep podcast. And it is, yes, an anthology podcast like the Twilight Zone, except there's 4 or 5 stories in each episode.
And yes, please send that. I know the idea of podcasts. I never seem to know how to find them or what to like.
What those that listen to podcasts, use one. What do you guys recommend for her or the whole audience of like, what is the best to find and listen to podcasts on?
Well, they're everywhere now, but probably Spotify is the easiest right now. But your phones usually come with a podcast player. There's a number of, you can listen to them straight from the website. But yeah, Spotify.
So you recommend most likely get Spotify and search for yours. Say like,
if you're already listening to Spotify, use Spotify. If you're not using Spotify, then use Stitcher or Apple Podcast Player, or there's just go into your app store and for podcast, and you'll get a bunch of players.
Okay.
And most podcasts are on most of them.
No Sleep podcast.
Yeah. That'll be on every one of them because it's like the number one in horror podcasts.
You're on the number one?
That's am. Really cool. I'm on the number one.
Number one.
You need to share these things more often.
I actually got an invitation to record in studio for the season finale. Ooh. And I've never done that before. And the season finale is going to be full of our friend celebs, which I've never met before. And I'm going to be too nervous to perform.
Oh, nice.
You'll do awesome. You're gonna do awesome.
You're gonna be the professional that you are.
Yes, so professional.
And then you can get all excited afterwards. You'll be like,
oh my god, I can't believe it.
Yeah, you'll be excited before you go into your pro mode and then excited after. It's gonna be great.
I've done this totally so many times. You're the only one there that's not in SAG.
Huh.
Yet.
Yeah.
That'll help change it.
Want to be.
All right. Well, we're going to listen to the No Sleep podcast, but for now, most of you will get sleep. So,
Hope
good
so.
night. Have a
Oh.
good.
Good
We're trying to leave,
night.
Angel. What's the?
Okay.
Oh, I'm just kidding.
Next week. Next week is
That's a good like thing to like tease. What is next week?
Pushing Daisies.
Pushing Daisies. Okay. Ooh, yeah. Love that series. Love that. So
Is
That's another-
there
Which
any
cute.
musical numbers in the first episode? Yes,
Which
at least
one?
one, right? Pushing Daisies.
Oh, Pushing Daisies.
I
What
feel like
genre
that's a
is
show that
that?
a lot of people may not have heard of or tried. But,
I
all
hope
right, so
they probably won't, but I hope they bring it back. But they
I was
probably
gonna say
won't.
very different than Twilight Zone, but there's that thing they could say
There's-
is maybe not so different.
It's
An
quirky.
element of it.
It's got a
So,
supernatural element.
Yes.
Yeah, it's anytime there's something that's quirky like that, I think has a similar feel. Like Twin Peaks, even
Oh, you're tired.
a
Okay.
bit of a feel.
But this one is more like bright and colorful and cutesy.
I
It's a
love
totally
that.
different
Yeah,
vibe.
it's so beautiful to
Amazing.
watch. I love watching those beautiful shows.
All right, so come back next week, watch and listen. And till then, good night, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.